name is Dagmara, and my objective for today is to provide you with the information about the immune system. Let me start with some general information about infection. Infection is the invasion and multiplication of microorganisms such as bacteria, viruses, and parasites that are not normally present within the body. An infection may cause no symptoms and be subclinical, or it may cause symptoms and be clinically apparent. An infection may remain localized or it may spread through the blood or lymphatic vessels to become systemic. Microorganisms that live naturally in the body are not considered infections. For example, bacteria that normally live within the mouth and intestine are not infections. Another important factor that could cause an infection disease are fungi, which cause infections to the lungs or nervous system. To fight these infections, our body has 3 lines of defenses. The first 2 lines of defense are non-specific, and the third line is a specific response. Non-specific defenses, also called innate, are those ones which do not distinguish between one type of pathogen or another. They demonstrate the same response to all of them in the same way. They exist from birth and are effective against a variety of pathogens and foreign bodies. The first line of defense consists of physical and chemical barriers to prevent entry of the pathogen. Components of innate immunity include skin, stomach acid, enzymes found in tears and skin oils, mucus, and the cough reflex. Skin is the first of the immune system non-specific defenses against pathogens and act as a nearly impenetrable barrier to invading pathogens. Furthermore, mucous membranes cover some body surfaces that come into contact with pathogens and produce a sticky, viscous fluid called mucus. Mucous membranes line the digestive system, nasal passages, lungs, respiratory passages, and the reproductive tract. Like the skin, mucous membranes serve as a barrier to pathogens and produce chemical defenses. These defenses work to prevent any pathogens from entering the body. Nonetheless, on occasions they are penetrated. In the situation when foreign body reach deeper tissue, a second line of non-specific defenses takes over. When the body is invaded, 4 important non-specific defenses take action: the inflammatory response, the temperature response, special proteins that kill or inhibit pathogens, and white blood cells which attack and kill pathogens. Injury or local infection can be cause of an inflammatory response. The area where cells have been infected or injured release chemicals including histamine. That causes local blood vessels to dilate, increasing blood flow to the area, which brings white blood cells to the infection site where they can attack pathogens. This is the factor of swelling and redness in the infected area, where you can also find pus. When the body begins fight against pathogens, the temperature increases several degrees above the normal value. This aspect is called a fever. It is helpful because many disease-causing bacteria do not grow well at high temperatures. On the other hand, a very high temperature could be dangerous to the organism and destroy important cellular proteins. In addition to that, various proteins can also provide non-specific defenses. Around 30 small proteins, also known as complement proteins, circulate in the blood and become active when they encounter certain pathogens. Yet the most important counterattacks in the second line of non-specific defenses are performed by 3 kinds of white blood cells: neutrophils, macrophages, and natural killer cells. The first one is the most abundant type of all white blood cells, and its main task is to engulf and destroy pathogens. The second type, macrophages, not only ingest and kill pathogens they encounter, but also clear dead cells and other debris from the body. The last one, a natural killer cell, is a large white blood cell that attacks cells infected with pathogens and destroys an infected cell by puncturing its cell membrane. Water then rushes into the infected cell, causing the cell to swell and in the end burst. On the assumption that pathogens have survived the first 2 lines of non-specific defenses, they still have to face a third line of defense, a specific response, also known as the immune response. The immune response consists of a multitude of individual cells that rush throughout the body to combat specific invading pathogens. The immune response is not localized in the body or controlled by a single organ. The key cells of the immune system are neutrophils, monocytes, eosinophils, basophils, and lymphocytes. Neutrophils attach to the walls of the blood vessels, in an attempt to block the access of germs to the bloodstream tractate. They are the first cells to reach an infected area of the body, and they act by means of a process known as phagocytosis, or cell eating. Monocytes are the largest of the different types of white blood cells and turn into macrophages when they exit the bloodstream. Their main task is phagocytosis. Eosinophils are important cells in relation to allergies and worm infection. They work by releasing toxins from their granules to kill pathogens, mainly parasites and worms. Basophils are the rarest of the white blood cells, and their specific functions are not yet well known. They act immediately as part of the immune system's action against foreign invaders and contain histamine, which acts to dilate the blood vessels, which allows more immune cells to reach an infection site more quickly. Lymphocytes play a major role in antibody production. There are two types of lymphocytes of the acquired immune system, T cells and B cells. This leads me to my next point, immunoglobulins. The term antibodies and immunoglobulins mean slightly different things, but they are often referred to interchangeably. Antibodies are proteins that are bound to antigens. The typical immunoglobulin is made up of 4 chains and is arranged in a Y-shaped configuration. There are different types of immunoglobulins with various roles. Immunoglobulin G is the most abundant one and is able to stimulate a very direct attack on anything that is recognized as being foreign. This type is also the only type of immunoglobulin that is transferred across the placenta from the mother to the fetus, providing unborn children with some protections from diseases to which they have not yet been exposed. Immunoglobulin A plays an important role in the cellular defense of the soft, moist mucosal surfaces of the body, for example, inside of the mouth. Immunoglobulin M comprises 5 normal immunoglobulins joined at their bases, and its first immunoglobulin synthesized is an antibody response. Immunoglobulin E is the largest of the immunoglobulin molecules that major function lays within parasitic infections and allergic reactions. The last one, immunoglobulin D, is a relatively uncommon, which function in the immune system is not yet certain. However, it may function as an antigen receptor of the surface of B cells. Now, let's come back again to the immune system. The human immune system is very complex in terms of the response to antigens and pathogens, and it does not have the same level of sensitivity to all antigens. The immune mechanism normally recognizes a person's own tissue as being distinctive from bacteria or viruses, and the person's immune system forms few antibodies to activate T cells against the person's own antigens. The phenomenon is known as self-tolerance to the body's own tissues. Sometimes people lose some of their immune tolerance to their own tissue. Failure of the tolerance mechanism causes autoimmune diseases and undesirable side effects of immunity. Hypersensitivity is an abnormal immune reaction which is caused by an immune response to repeated exposure to the same antigen. Hypersensitivity disease can be grouped into 4 major types based upon their underlying causes. On this note, I would like to proceed to my next slide. The transplantation is a difficult procedure. It is the act of transferring cells, tissues, or organs from one side to another, typically from one person to another. There are 4 different types of transplants. Autograft is a transplant of tissue or a whole organ from one part of the same person to another part. Esograft is a transplant from one identical twin to another. Furthermore, we have allograft, which happens between one human being to another, or an animal to another animal of the same species. An xenograft is when the transplanted tissue comes from a lower animal to a human being, or from an animal of one species to another species. Any foreign cells transplanted into an organism can provoke immune responses and immune reactions. In that case of autografts and esografts, cells in the transplant contain virtually the same types of antigens and will almost always live indefinitely when an adequate blood supply is provided. On the other hand, allografts and xenografts will almost always cause immune reaction that leads to death of all the cells in the graft within 1 to 5 weeks after transplantation, unless some treatment is used to stop the immune reaction. The human body has the ability to resist almost all types of organisms or toxins that tend to damage the tissue and organs. If for some reason the own immune system is attacking healthy cells in the body, it means that the organism have an autoimmune disease. There are more than 80 different types of autoimmune diseases, from multiple sclerosis and type 1 diabetes to celiac disease and rheumatoid arthritis. The exact cause of autoimmune disease is unknown, although there are many theories about what causes it to malfunction, including bacteria, virus, drugs, and chemical or environmental irritants. In this part of presentation, I would like to talk about two of the most common autoimmune diseases, which are rheumatoid arthritis and type 1 diabetes. On this slide, you can see the difference between healthy joint and joint affected by rheumatoid arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis is a form of arthritis that causes pain, swelling, stiffness, and loss of function in joints. It can affect any joint, but is common in the wrists and fingers. More women than men get rheumatoid arthritis. It often starts in middle age and is most common in older people, but children and young adults can also get it. Rheumatoid arthritis can affect body parts besides joints, such as your eyes, mouth, and lungs, and is an autoimmune disease, which means that arthritis results from your immune system attacking your body's own tissues. No one knows what causes rheumatoid arthritis. Genes, environment, and hormones may contribute. Treatments include medicine, lifestyle changes, and surgery. This can slow or stop joint damage and reduce pain and swelling. Diabetes means your blood glucose or blood sugar levels are too high. With type 1 diabetes, your pancreas does not make insulin. Insulin is a hormone that helps glucose get into your cells to give them energy. Without insulin, too much glucose stays in your blood. Over time, high blood glucose can lead to serious problems with your heart, eyes, kidneys, nerves, and gums and teeth. Type 1 diabetes happens most often in children and young adults, but can appear at any age. Symptoms may include being very thirsty, urinating often, feeling very hungry or tired, losing weight without trying, having sores that heal slowly, having dry, itchy skin, losing the feeling in your feet or having tingling in your feet, and having blurry eyesight. A blood test can show if you have diabetes. If you do, you will need to take insulin for the rest of your life. The specific source of autoimmune diseases are not known, however, there are many theories about what could trigger autoimmune disease. Nevertheless, thanks to the advancement in medicine, our organism can acquire immunity to certain diseases. Acquired immunity is a learned response from the body's immune system, which is also often called specific immunity, because the immune system tailors its attack to a specific antigen that the body has previously encountered. There are two main types, passive and active. The first one is the result of antibodies being passed into in some way, rather than being produced by the individual itself, and can be further divided into natural or artificially acquired. If antibodies pass across placenta from mother to her fetus, or are passed to the newborn baby in the mother's milk, the young developing mammal acquires some natural protection from diseases until its own immune system is fully functional. On the other hand, in the situation that individual gets an injection of antibodies from another individual, the immunity is gained artificially. The second type of immunity is an active immunity that occurs when an organism manufactures its own antibodies. This kind of immunity can be naturally a result of an infection. In response to a pathogen, the body starts to manufacture antibodies and can continue for a long time or even permanently. This is the reason that most of the people suffer some diseases only once, like mumps. Another way to achieve producing antibodies without suffering disease is the injection of the appropriate antigen, which is the basis of immunization, also called vaccination. Vaccination is exposing the individual's immune system to a weakened or harmless version of the pathogen in order to stimulate white blood cells to produce antibodies with the intention of providing immunity against the specific pathogen. In the situation where the person later becomes infected with the pathogen, the immune system is able to produce antibodies quicker and destroy it. This is known as immunological memory. The response of the immune system can be divided into primary response and the secondary response. When a pathogen is encountered for the first time, it takes time for the antigen to be identified and for the appropriate antibodies to be produced, which allows time for the infection to take hold and cause the associated symptoms. Memory cells are produced at this point, which will be able to recognize the same pathogen if it is encountered a second time. If that situation occurs, the memory cells recognize the pathogen and produce higher quantities of antibodies more quickly and for a longer period of time, which often fights off the infection before symptoms are seen. There are a number of advantages of vaccination, like savings in healthcare, extended life expectancy, or economic growth in developing countries. Immunization and vaccination help protect against serious diseases. For example, viral diseases cannot be cured with antibiotics and can only be controlled by immunization. Immunization programs have helped some diseases to become completely eradicated. Before the introduction of vaccines, childhood deaths were more common from diseases such as measles. Measles was first vaccinated against in the UK in the late 1960s with the introduction of the MRR vaccine in 1988. As you can see, the number of notifications and deaths drops down since 1968, even half, and keep dropping down ever since, to have none or individual deaths due to unvaccination, complication of measles, or secondary infection. As we know, not all people are on the same page when it comes to vaccination. And this is why another way to stop the disease from spreading is getting enough people vaccinated, which can act as some sort of protection for unvaccinated members. When a high percentage of the population is vaccinated, it is more difficult for contagious infectious diseases to spread, and that is because there are few people who can become infected. This is called herd immunity or community immunity. It is a form of immunity that occurs when the vaccination of a significant portion of population provides a measure of protection to vulnerable people, such as newborn babies, elderly people, and those who are too sick to be vaccinated. Herd immunity can effectively stop the spread of some contagious disease, but does not protect against all vaccine-preventable diseases, like tetanus, which is infectious but not contagious. It is caught from bacteria in the environment, and no matter how many people around are vaccinated against it, it will not protect from developing its condition. According to British Medical Bulletin, Volume 62, Issue 1, about the vaccination programs and policies in the UK, all childhood immunization and nationally recommended immunization for adults, such as influenza vaccine, are provided free and they are not compulsory. Here we can see a typical vaccination schedule. These arrangements have contributed to a high coverage rate for immunization, but there are also other reasons that are responsible for vaccine uptake. Several factors are thought to contribute to vaccine uptake. The payment of general practitioners only when they reach coverage targets, improvements in the computerized tracking system has facilitated the identification and follow-up of defaulters, widespread dissemination of up-to-date guidelines of immunization theory and practice sent free to all healthcare professionals involved in immunization, appointment of immunization coordinators in each health district, acceleration of the timing of scheduled immunizations, the development of a national immunization communication strategy. Public confidence in the safety of vaccines is critical for the maintenance of successful immunization programs. Failure to sustain that can have disastrous consequences, because despite of all the advances in new vaccines and the improvements in the provision of immunization services, the greatest threat comes not from now a new or re-emerging infectious diseases, but from public loss of confidence in vaccine safety. All in all, participation in the immunization program is an individual decision. However, before we agree or disagree to participate, we should gain as much valid and up-to-date information in order to protect ourselves and people around us. Thank you for your attention.